Hello all, this video looks at the short run Phillips curve, but this time we're going to look at cost push inflation. Okay, let's have a look at the relationship between inflation and unemployment when it comes to cost push inflation. Obviously the last video we looked at demand pull. Okay, so if we have a look at this diagram here, you can see there in the blue that short run aggregate supply has decreased to short run aggregate supply 2, and this would be because the cost of production has increased. So let's just have a look at the flow diagram to explain this. So if the cost of production increases, then short-run aggregate supply will decrease from short-run aggregate supply 1 to 2, which we can see here. Now, as a result, look what happens to unemployment. Unemployment actually increases, and inflation also increases. Now, remember, this is different to demand pull. So for cost push inflation, if unemployment increases, inflation also increases, and that is because firms would be less willing and able to make products because the cost of production has increased, and as a result of that, firms will increase their selling price because the cost of production has increased. But also because firms are less willing and able to supply products, they won't need as many people, so they will need or demand less labour, and as a result unemployment will increase. So therefore, when it comes to cost push inflation, as unemployment increases, inflation also increases. I'd like you to draw a task. So I'd like you to carry out a task before the next lesson, and that is to draw a flow diagram showing unemployment decreasing and inflation decreasing. Can you explain the relationship between the two? Now let's have a look at the short run Phillips curve then. How do we show this? Okay, so how do we show these changes in short run aggregate supply? How do we show these changes? Okay, so let's just have a look at what would happen if there is an increase in short run aggregate supply. But before we do that, let's just take that across and we'll have a 2% inflation rate will go down and 5% natural rate of inflation. Now I'm just going to potentially move an issue here with this curve. Let's draw this more like this. Okay, let's do that again. Okay, so what would happen then if short run aggregate supply decrease, firms were less willing and able to supply products. Number 2, P2, well, we can see we've got inflation, and here we can see that we've got more people unemployed, of course, because the firm's costs have gone up, so they're going to be less willing and able to supply. So look at what's happened to GDP, it's gone down, and therefore the firms are going to need less labour to make their products. Also, price levels will go up because the cost of production has increased, and firms will want to pass on that cost to consumers, so they have increased their selling price. So the average price of goods and services has increased. Now, if we took that to the short run Phillips curve, we can see if we hit this point, we can actually see that that's 3%. If we take that down, now that actually shows that unemployment has decreased, but here we put in 4%, that shows that unemployment has decreased. However, we know from here, Y1 to Y2, we know from here that unemployment has actually increased and employment has decreased, whereas this doesn't show it here. So as a result, let's just remove that 4%. What we have to do here is we actually have to shift the short run Phillips curve. So, and the way to remember how to do this is, if it's a decrease in short run aggregate supply, so short run aggregate supply decreases, then we have to show an increase in the short run Phillips curve. So we now draw the short run Phillips curve, we draw an increase, short run Phillips curve 2, and now if we take that 3% across and then down, and we'll have 6% natural rate of unemployment, we can now see that this mirrors what's going on the ADAS diagram. So here we can see that inflation has increased and unemployment has also increased. And when we go back to our flow diagram, we know why that is. Okay, now let's look at the scenario if cost of production falls. And if cost of production falls, then then firms are going to be more willing and able to supply products. So short run aggregate supply will shift from short run aggregate supply 1 to short run aggregate supply 3. And as a result, price levels will go down because it's cheaper for firms to produce products. But as it's cheaper to produce products, it also means that firms are more willing and able to produce products, and therefore we need more people to do that. So again, what we do is we go across. Let's just say inflation has gone down to 1% on the Phillips curve, but this time we had an increase in short run aggregate supply, which means we will have a decrease in the short run Phillips curve. So we'll draw the short run Phillips curve like that. We'll take and we'll label that one short run Phillips curve 3. Now we take that 1%, we hit the short run Phillips curve 3, will go down, and we'll have a 4% natural rate of unemployment. So now we can see that the cost of production has decreased, firms are more willing and able to produce products. As a result of that, they are going to need more people to make those products. So as a result, more people are employed, less people are unemployed. So the natural rate of unemployment goes down from 5 to 4%. And also as a result of the fact that cost of production is cheaper, economic theory would suggest that firms will decrease their selling price. So therefore the average price of goods and services will also decrease from 2% to 1%.